listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and Bing.com, and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AfterBuzz TV Saturday Night Live After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's SNL After Show.
Bing is for doing, and we're doing another AfterBuzz After Show for Saturday Night Live for the October 20th episode with host and musical guest Bruno Mars. Ooh. I'm your host for this hour. I'm Matthew Kyle. With me is Filup Molina. Hey. Hey. And Erik Voss.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. So, big show. Big show. Big things are happening. Mm-hmm. We're gonna...
Was it a big show?
I don't think it was.
Okay.
I was just trying to be nice.
But big things are happening.
But big things are happening. Yeah. And so we're going to break down the show for you here in the next hour. And also, we have a little special segment where we're going to talk about the background of improvisation. Excuse me. It's hard to say that word.
It's hard to improvise right here on the air. Go ahead.
It is.
Go for it. Did not go
of
well.
improvisation. So stay tuned for that. So, but first, let's break down the host, Bruno Mars, and the musical guest.
Ooh.
I thought it was
double
two
threat.
people. What did I?
Yeah. Well, one of them was
Kind
a
of.
blind man who wore sunglasses. Every musical. Did you notice that? I felt so awkward. I was like, I always thought it was really cool when a musical guest goes out there with sunglasses on, because I'm like, man, he wears them all day. But we just saw like 25 minutes of you without sunglasses. Then I imagine like it's time for me to do the musical guest part. Where are my sunglasses? Like it's such an awkward thing to put him on for his performance.
It was his Superman Clark Kent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to. Well, I mean, he follows the lineage of who else was a double performer there. You had Britney Spears did it once.
Tim.
Justin Timberlake, you know, probably somebody in the 70s. I don't know.
Someone in their 70s.
Somebody
Mick
in-
Jagger.
George Segal
Cool.
back in the day.
Yeah, sweet. So I thought he did a admirable job. I thought it really came off respectable because of his charisma. Then we were all just like, God, this little guy is so adorable. I'm not gonna have any issues with him. And the writers did an okay job at deciding, you know what, this guy self-admitted is not a comedic performer. Let's ask him what he can do, and then let's give him sketches to showcase.
Did you feel that way once you started him performing?
Yeah, well, you know, I think as an SNL host, we often think like they need to be funny. I want to see how funny they can be in these sketches, but I think Bruno proved that you don't necessarily need to be funny as much as you are just likable and game to do whatever is required from you in the show. And he didn't really necessarily make me laugh a ton during the show, but I was totally into everything he was doing for the most part.
Look,
you know?
the key is you want to be on his side, and certain hosts you're kind of like, wow, God, why is this guy hosting? And other ones like, oh, you cute little guy, you keep on running that milk.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I liked him. I thought he showed an ability for comedic timing, and not only that, I think that he was very committed. And if you have comedic timing and commitment, that's 9/10 of the battle there. So I thought, you know, if he had a platform to do much, I mean. But we'll get into that. But yeah, I think, you know, for being a host of Saturday Night Live, solid job. You know, I'd give him a BB+.
Cool.
Just in that.
If you want to give us a B+, A-, A+, check us out on iTunes.
Oh,
and,
that's right.
Give us some ratings. Yeah. If you rate our segues on there, please make note of the one I just did. Yeah, just share it. Check it out. Give us some 5-starage.
Totally. Anything you can do, we much appreciate. Tell a friend about the show and have them watch or record or just download off iTunes, whatever you want. And we appreciate all the support you can offer us. So, you know who else needed some support? Bruno Mars.
Aw.
Yeah, because that show sucked. And I'll say it right up front.
I'll say the show was on the weekend. it's kind of like that phone call.
Were you splitting up those words on the weekend?
Yeah.
He's just very
Yikes.
literal.
Yeah, I would say it was just on the weekend. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else noticed. It happened on the weekend.
One of those rare Saturday shows.
Yeah. No, it's the kind where like they, like Lauren's parents got called and they're like, we've seen him do so much better when he applies himself. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, it was tough. There were some highlights that I thought were interesting choices. I know you don't necessarily want SNL to do interesting; you just want them to do funny. But I think a variety show has a responsibility to sometimes take some risks, and I think they did that.
Well, right off the bat, I mean, they go with a non-risk. You're going to open the show with that, but you go with what you have to lead with, and obviously that was the debate sketch. What did you guys feel of that? We had our Jay Pharoah sighting as usual.
Well, yeah, I think. This was an actual debate where they had a lot of material to go with. The last time they had the presidential debate, it was kind of a boring debate. Not very exciting performances by Obama or by Romney. There was really nothing to make jokes about. Whereas this debate, whether it was the combative nature of the two candidates or all the weird people who were in the audience asking questions, you had plenty of things to make jokes about. So I thought this was, for a broad parody sketch that lasts about 10 minutes, which these political debate cold opens tend to be. I thought there was a lot of good one-liners in there, and I thought there was a lot of fun things that they played with.
I was a little let down. I know we all watched the actual debate, and we saw the people in there. We're like, man, these are going to be hilarious on SNL later because these people are freaks. But that's the undecided voter probably is typically a freak right now. If you were watching it and you saw Adie Bryant there, and you were like, hey, who's that? That's Adie Bryant. She joined the cast earlier this year, but she hilarious. Her improv background, she did I.O. She's done the Annoyance Theater from Chicago. She performed with Cecily Strong on Virgin Daiquiri. Up there.
Cecily Strong, the other new cast member as well.
Right. I think she also, Erik, she did a lot of like improv in college. So.
Yeah, she was in Columbia College of Chicago's improv group there, so she's been doing improv for a long time.
And she's smart. She got into Columbia.
Yeah, well, in college, not university, right? So.
College and not university?
Yeah.
Oh, Columbia College and not Columbia University?
There's a difference.
There is a huge difference.
Hey guys, she got into college, period.
Yeah, all right.
Let's not downplay
in Columbia. But anyway, in general, there was this awkwardness for me in that sketch, and it comes from, this might be my own personal experience that's coloring this, but whenever I did any kind of comedy in college that involved aggression, the potential for a fight, we realize there's this like fine line where it starts to get a little awkward when you just see two men kind of like puff up and threaten each other. It stops becoming funny, and I think a little bit of that started to come into play. I know that political strategists always warn Obama against going too aggressive because I mean I hate to say that, but this is their reasoning. They say he'll come off as an angry black man, and that that turns off white voters. I think this sketch had a little bit of that where it's like they're literally just like showing their fists to each other, baring their teeth, and it gets to me that just like gets a little awkward just intrinsically because I fear fighting. And so it just turns me off a little bit. So I actually didn't find it that funny, even though there was so much. Also, not a single Binders Full of Women reference in that entire thing. Is it
ding, ding, ding?
Yeah, is it? Do you think just too many jokes were already made? Because that's that is the high road for SNL to be like, hey, you know what? Everybody else joked about it.
Right, but they usually never take the high road on anything.
Exactly.
So what's the why start now?
I think they, Jim Downey, who wrote this, probably had to pick and choose his battles with what he was going to make jokes about. And I think, when you're at the end of the week, when the debate was on Tuesday night, and you have a week's worth of late night comedians and brilliant Twitter comedians making jokes about Binders Full of Women, I'm sure he didn't want to feel like, oh, I'm, rehashing old worn material at this point,
If there's any week to take the week off, it's next week because the debate is on Monday. It's tomorrow, and they would have a whole week of everyone else making all the jokes they're to make, and then them trying to do it. So I actually think I wonder if it was partially calculated. Let's take this week off since we're not going to have anything new to say about it.
That's a really good point. So anybody listening, comment us and tell us what you think about that. If they meant to take it out or maybe it was just a huge oversight. I mean, who knows? But and then obviously Jay Pharoah. Doing the Obama.
His Obama.
Yeah. It seemed like it was a lot more room to loosen up and not do it as suited as he usually does it. And I don't think he really went after that.
Yeah, I'll give him that, because of the nature of this sketch, the angle that they took on it, the whole sit on my finger and spin angle that they did. At least we saw a take on Obama. And it's like, oh man, Obama as a tough guy. this is slightly more interesting to watch than usual. At least it wasn't the standard stuttering Obama, which I don't know if you guys noticed they cut down very much. He was barely doing that stupid thing that he does every time he plays Obama.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a different version of Obama show up to the debate, so we got to see a slightly different flavor of Jay Pharoah's Obama show up to the sketch. And I really like the button on the end of just dropping the mic. We saw Obama do that actually on Jimmy Fallon when he was doing the news segment. He dropped
the news.
Yeah. He dropped the mic. So I don't know if it was a reference to that, but it was just a nice way to end the sketch there.
Nice cheer there.
Yeah.
The monologue that followed that up with Bruno Mars.
You end the sketch, the traditional sketch, they're going to do the debate. So what traditional thing can they do in the monologue that they nearly always do now?
Yeah. So last week I was like, hey, you think they'll start with the song next week?
No way.
You know what they did though? They took my advice because I know they listen and they rate. They slowed the song down, and this is what I was talking to you about last week, where I was like, a song can be great. You brought up it does bring energy. I think you have to be able to hear the words, and it has to go at a pacing where you can laugh at a line before you hear the next line. So this one had the right pacing. It just didn't have the jokes, except for the fact that he was a small Filipino lady or small Filipino girl. Just like, did you catch that?
Yeah.
And never came back. Just its own thing. That was the only joke really in the whole thing.
Yeah, this was one thing I do like about the monologues is whenever there's a host that we have any kind of trepidation or concerns about coming into the episode, they'll often give the host an opportunity in the monologue to inoculate that and to say, listen, I know you're worried about this with me. Daniel Craig said, listen, I know I have no comedic background, but I can do this and just give me a chance. And I think Bruno Mars did a good job of that in the monologue. However, any opportunity, you need some kind of moment where he does make the audience laugh a little bit. And I think...
Well, you don't think they had that? I felt like right when he hit the stage, and the New York thing was not a funny joke, but I thought it was well performed. I thought his comedic timing kind of showed there, and I was like, oh, this guy's got some chops. He's moving. He must have some type of theater background because he does not seem awkward there at all.
He seemed fully comfortable.
I don't have a theater background at all, honestly, and I can kind of.
But you're so awkward.
Yeah, we've noticed.
I had all of the awkwardness in the black clothes, but not the performance ability. But I just mean I think certain people can speak in front of a crowd, and he has that for sure.
Totally.
It's not exactly comedic. It's maybe a charmer. I think that's who.
But
he
at least
is.
I felt like he seemed comfortable enough that it was like, hey, we can move a little bit away from your element, and you're still going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then I think they kind of got into this with the next live bit. Which was the haters with Cecily Bryant as the host. I thought maybe that was going to go somewhere.
Oh, Cecily Strong.
Cecily Strong, I'm sure.
Right.
80 Bryant.
And
Cecily Strong, excuse me.
If only we're legal.
It seemed like it was like
the cast members.
one of those Maury or Jerry Springer talk show parodies. And I was wondering, what year are we in right now?
That's what I
seemed to
felt
be about like a decade too old there.
To me, I don't know if any viewers know Bruno Mars's background better than I do, because you don't. No, but I would love to know where he came out of, because this reminded me of, I'm from Miami, and this was kind of what was funny in Miami was a boy who could kind of like, oh, I can play like a sassy ghetto chick, or like that's kind of what you would.
So you're going off the premise that he came in and was like, hey, I play a real good sassy ghetto chick, and they go, let's write something around this.
Exactly, and I think that's why this sketch is like, is this just about sassy ghetto chicks? Because that's all it really was. The only moment I actually found genuinely funny is when Tim Robinson, IO trains and Tim Robinson, comes in and just is getting booed for no reason. It's just like, well, you guys, this booing has no basis.
Well, obviously, and then the lead character came out there was Bobby Moynihan, who longtime UC beer in New York, and then came over. He's probably been there for, I'm going to say, 4 seasons, 5 seasons now. He's been there for a while now. Yeah. Really weak character. Like, come on, run of the mill.
I think that's one of the characters he semi-auditioned with, because he did, in college, the UCB Tour Co. Came to University of Florida. I remember he kind of had like that edge, like, he found that character kind of funny, and I think he auditioned with the character. I don't know if you remember. She was like a waitress, and she was like this ghetto.
No,
waitress,
they've done that bit before. They did that bit with Tom Brady.
Right.
Yeah, and
so.
Yeah, it's an annoying go-to when they have a host that they don't trust to play comedic roles, to just like put him in drag and hope that that's enough to carry the sketch.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was his choice. I think he was like, put me in drag, I'll carry the sketch, I'm adorable.
It's third and short, put me in drag.
Put me in, coach, put me in.
Exactly. It was more like a 4th and 10 after that got over.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for skipping the Brad Pitt sketch, the video sketch.
Well, anybody with a DVR did.
Yeah, I really hope you
Because, yeah, let's talk about that real quick. But Taran Killam, who's doing a Brad Pitt impression from the Chanel commercials, right? And it was a runner through the show. They did it 3 times. Don't know why they felt like it could work once, let alone 3, but
4.
They did it
they
4
did it
times.
4 times.
4 times
Well,
too
then
many.
I probably missed one on my DVR. So thank you, TiVo, for letting me miss one of those.
Well, the comedic rule of 4s. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, that's
But
right.
you
That's right. They're
it.
changing the landscape, comedic
Yeah.
rule of 4, since everything's slowing down.
When the first one doesn't work, do it 3 more times. And, then
And what was funny is once before I saw Taran do Brad Pitt on the
Pitt.
show, and I thought it was
Amazing.
really good, right?
yeah, when Maya Rudolph played Beyonce and they had the
Exactly.
new baby.
The new baby and everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh, wow. That was loud. I thought that was behind me. That was amazing.
Yeah, surround
sound, Filup.
Yeah. But yeah, his
What happened to the voice?
Yeah, his impression there was great, but I feel like now in the Chanel ad, maybe it was a low key sketch. He was softer.
But the voice
speaking.
wasn't even
the
right.
voice wasn't there, and he didn't have some of those vocal tics or the handles that he had before. Now he couldn't really do them, so it just felt awkward. And
Premise
off.
was awkward and wasn't really there until the second one. They're like, oh, what if he did this on different things? Erik pointed out to me that The Talk, which is essentially a show like The View, they did a version where they just played the actual clips from the commercial and then they kind of riffed off of it. And that's the kind of thing that I've been trying to push SNL to do. Like, you don't always have to do your own, like, oh, our impressionists are so good. If you want to make fun of something, sometimes it's so funny to just show it. When they showed Michelle Obama, you were talking about last week, and it was just actual footage of Michelle Obama looking a bit disappointed in her husband. That to me is hilarious. Maybe play with funny editing sometimes if you're going to do a video sketch. It was just the weakest thing I've seen them do in a really long time, and it hurt me a lot to watch it.
Yeah, and you've seen these runners sometimes. The first one doesn't really go that well, but it kind of gains momentum, and as you do it more and more, the audience starts to get behind it. This was not that, and I think that's what they were hoping for after they showed the first one. Rather than cutting the ones after the first one didn't work, they're like, oh no, it'll work next time.
It'll build.
Work again. And then instead it was law of diminishing returns. It seemed like each one, it just, by the time
His
was...
eyes got whiter.
Yeah.
That was the only thing. They just those incredibly white eyes.
Yeah, and it was even the writing was really on the nose. Like everything was just so self-commenting. It was just like, oh, okay, we get it, you know?
Yeah.
Just kind of a miserable piece of work. Let's just leave it at that.
But a nice lead into what I think is probably the best sketch of the night. It's
I would agree, setting the bar low, but I would agree it's the best sketch of the night. Philip, tell us about
It's definitely the one that your mom got tickled by. Yeah, your mom specifically, Matt. I don't know if she told you, but this idea of just, so much fun there. The Pandora mission control room. What I think, again, this is exactly a nice mirror to hold up next to the haters, where it's like, Bruno, what can you do? I can do ghetto sassy chick, and I can do voices like, punk singers or whatever. I think we've all kind of done it when we're listening to Blink 182 in the car or something, just like mimic that voice a little bit and realize how silly that is. And I think he said he could do that. So like, okay, let's write a sketch around it. But instead of it being a weak impersonation thing or something, they came up with something, and I thought it was pretty original to showcase that ability. I was impressed. It grew on me.
Yeah, and that was one moment that began kind of like a streak in the episode. Of everything was just, I felt, going really well, where we got to see some of the vocal range of Bruno Mars and got to see him in his element, but see it work in a sketch to where that context worked well. On one end, you had the silly Pandora mission control. I don't know if all of our moms would have necessarily understood that. My mom has no idea how Pandora works or anything like that. But it was just a fun context to see, looking not necessarily just like NASA these days, but like Apollo 13 NASA, where they're
1960.
skinny tie. And
exactly.
So, but that was really fun, and I thought he did a really good job. And when he couldn't do it, the Louis Armstrong, it was fun to see Jason Sudeikis just be like, "Not your best, Kevin. Not your best." Or Devin. What is his name?
Devin, the smooth criminal, zing dong zing zong zing zong. Like it was.
Oh yeah, and then he grabbed Jason Sudeikis' arm so he could do the leans, which was great. I thought that was all great. I thought the one, I don't know why exactly they used it, because he's not going to sing in that range, but the Katy Perry,
right?
That was just the fireworks. You were just like, okay. Because everything else was working really well. I mean, obviously, I knew they were going to lead strong with the Green Day, and then I was like, let's see what he finishes with. And then the Michael Jackson, I was like, okay. I think on the Grammys some years ago, he did Michael Jackson, homage or impression, if you will, too. So he has that.
Can we talk about that for a second? How much
Michael Jackson?
This guy looks like a
young
weird clone of like what was left over that Michael Jackson left on Earth or something.
Some of the cutting room floor of Michael
like
Jackson pushed together to make one.
A little bit, other than the fact that Michael Jackson was like 5'11" and he's like 11 inches tall.
If Michael Jackson was left in the room with a Puerto Rican embryo or something, I think this is what came out of that.
That could be.
Because it would not have been a Puerto Rican woman. That would not create anything. But anyway.
We're getting too much on topic now, so we better get back to off topic stuff. But yeah, the Pandora, I thought, it was really fun. It was obviously, and I agree with you, I don't know if you can see it in another direction, that it was like, I can do these impressions of people singing, and like, all right, what's the first thing somebody can think of?
Right.
Pandora radio station, and then the vocals break down, but the instrumentals still work.
Yeah.
I don't know. That makes no sense, but that's not the point, because, once you get to the premise where our moms would understand it, it's a really fun bit, and
I think one other thing they nailed was the ending. You see a lot of SNL sketches just kind of peter out, and then they put like the end on the screen.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like, they had a fun thing with him dying at the end, just getting too overworked, and then they had the fun tribute at the end where his face is in the moon.
For
just
no
makes
reason.
no sense, other than the Apollo 13 reference.
That's the only thing I wish they'd done a little bit more of, is the juxtaposition of just like this nerdy guy. So he's doing Bieber and like being all sexy, and then maybe if they'd just cut back to him just being like, I can't take it anymore or something, or just like breaking down and leading to that death. That could have been fun, but otherwise, I mean, great sketch for the night that we had.
Yeah, I think, and so, I mean, I guess the great sketches were short-lived, and in a way, the next sketch was kind of a revisit to the digital short world, if you will, but it was more of a digital short film.
Digital, right, yeah, exactly.
And, so this one was called Sad Mouse.
Yeah.
And I think produced by a graduate student at UCLA, in my opinion.
So
but,
for this, I want to propose something. I know that Matt and Erik here have very different opinions on Sad Mouse.
We sure do.
Can we have a quick debate here on just what this was, why it was important, or why it was wrong? So Matt, we're gonna go ahead and put 15 seconds on the clock for you, just basic contention.
I'll get a response time, right?
You will.
Do we have a timekeeper?
Erik.
Is it
Erik? You will get.
I think he's got his turn to talk.
Are you following Faye Schaefer's footsteps in the next debate here?
Yeah,
Is that what you're doing?
Bob Shapers.
Is it Bob Shapers?
Yeah.
Because he makes the sketchers shape up. That wasn't my 15 seconds, right?
You're far beyond.
I will tell you 15 seconds of why this was awful. Thank you. Sad Mouse was disappointing because this is a live sketch show devoted to comedy for the last 38 seasons. They just proved that they know they can't do comedy at a high enough level anymore, and they did a short film which had no intention of being funny. And I am completely blown away by the fact that they would think that's okay to do on Saturday Night Live. Not good.
I'm Mr. Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Is that your final answer? Because who wants
That
to
is.
be another music? Yeah. No, I humbly disagree. I feel like
No music. No. Okay. Go.
we're in
Go
the,
ahead.
in the hot seat.
Time starts.
No, I feel like one thing that's great about SNL is the fact that it's a variety show, and I thought that the digital shorts was a great innovation that they did with the show. And a lot of the early digital shorts weren't necessarily funny in the conventional sense; they were just interesting and they were eclectic and weird. And I feel like that variety and texture is what makes SNL interesting when we're watching. I thought that's what Sad Mouse was. It wasn't hilarious, haha, funny, but it was just an interesting aesthetic. It was a very heartfelt, engaging little story there, and it just felt different from everything else. So that's one of the reasons I liked it.
So it reminds me a bit of the John Belushi sketch from way back when, about going into the future and all the cast members had died, and he was the last one, and he was sitting at the grave of all of the dead cast members, and it was just this weird, sad moment, but super interesting.
Weird, I'm okay with.
Yeah.
Artistically, not going for funny, I have a huge problem with.
All right,
And that is and first of all, the digital shorts, a lot of them I had a problem with just because they weren't funny as well. So, I mean, my problem goes back to that. But this was a complete departure from attempting to be funny, because it's something to do something abstract, but hoping that people get it, or, they find the tone with you and then you're all laughing together. But when you do a short film, which is really what that was, about a guy dressing up in a mouse costume who's really sad, and then, oh, ho hum, the normal ending, he finds somebody else in a costume, and they walk away, and you hear the blue hairs in the audience clapping. I was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Marge Simpson.
The old blue hairs.
The old blue hairs, right? The old Marge
I
Simpsons.
think this really, the line is drawn on what you think SNL is supposed to be doing, what its role is today. Should it be
Because
doing?
goes. Look, I'll say this: if
You're far over time,
if
by
that
the way.
episode,
Go ahead.
I don't care. I'm Mitt Romney. I'll do what I want. Okay.
All right, you won the coin toss.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If the rest of the episode was even a good episode, a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 episode or beyond, I would give them more leeway. But the fact is, they can't do anything well pretty much at this point. This was a really poor episode. And then on top of that, you do something that you're like, kind of throwing your hands up. Like, look, we keep putting stuff out and it's all garbage. Let's try and do something else. And it's like, no, this is not, you're Saturday Night Live. You either do this or you don't. I get trying to work in different realms of funny and being funny in different ways. But I don't want it.
All right, Eric, you had 30 seconds of response time, but Matt, I think, just used up 28 of those. If you want 2 seconds, go ahead.
Wait, can I have 3 more things plus 1 more?
Okay, go ahead. And good. Eric, really, you didn't show up.
No, I think
shape up.
No, this was it was just something very different. I guess it depends, what you're looking for SNL, why you're tuning in, and I think if you're just tuning in for 90 minutes of comedy, I can understand that this would feel like a letdown. Sometimes I just want like a curveball. I like some of the wild card sketches in there, and most of the time we're used to seeing them in the last 10 minutes of the show, but sometimes I like seeing them pulled early in the show. Just some of these different weird ideas that aren't necessarily going to be gut-busting hilarious, but it's something different and it's something interesting, and it was shot interestingly and it was shot really well. And
that I agree with.
Yeah.
And out of context, I don't think it's a bad piece. On SNL, then I have a problem with it.
The thing that it made me lean into this episode and watch for a second when I was kind of distancing myself from it in other parts, I think that's its goal to me. I've always seen Saturday Night Live because I started watching it before I understood humor. I would just watch it and be like, some things I would just be like, this is visually interesting, and I would kind of list out, like, it would pull me in. It did that for me, so it wins for me, but only because I like weird stuff sometimes. I agree, it wasn't funny. That's a little sad.
And that's my crux of it, is what it is what it is. And if I saw it in any other form, I'd be like, it was really well shot. It was good. Simple in premise, but extremely well executed.
It's the same reason why I watched Louis, though. Louis is considered a comedy, but it's not laugh out loud funny. Speaking of Louis C.K., he's going to be hosting it in 2 weeks.
Perfect marriage.
It's a yes.
They could not be funny together and then call themselves comedians on a comedy show. But I understand what you're saying, but I still think that Louis is trying to be funny. Even when he's not, I just think he's a risk taker, and a lot of times he's just more of a social commentator, and he'll say things because he doesn't write a lot of jokes. If you see a stand-up, it's not like a punchline base, even though he'll hit a punchline. But yes, exactly, better than I could say.
Yeah, we'll see how he does actually, how they bring in that comedic voice.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So
next week.
November, no, not next week. November 3rd. We're off
2
next
weeks.
week.
Yeah, right. So the next segment, weekend update.
Totally.
I honestly, I would say this whole season the jokes haven't been kind of knockout jokes. The segments, though, I said previously, I was like, they keep doing these bits where they, Seth turns the camera and he does a special segment. What are you doing for Obama?
Right.
Those things, and I was like, man, they're really nailing it with those. The writing's been sharp.
The do's and don'ts this week.
It didn't work for me this week.
No, you didn't feel it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Every other time I've been very impressed, but there was a couple that worked for me. Don't mention that it's the Winter Olympics and stuff. I mean, that was kind of fun. In general, it just didn't have. I guess usually there's a lot of edge there. When he did "What Are You Doing, Obama?" that was when Obama was sailing into another term. It was Mitt had just made all these mistakes. It was a wonderful.
September was great.
Yeah. But they really went after Obama that week for saying he couldn't change things from inside of Washington. I think that's what it was. And that was just so edgy, but it's so spot on and so great. And then this week, it was just kind of like, oh, here's a well-rounded, even-handed thing.
Do's and don'ts.
It felt a little obligatory, kind of like one of those columns that you might see in People, like the do's and don'ts when you're going into the Florida debate. Do this, don't do this. And it just felt like, oh, we should do another one of these things. When here, I don't know if it was really called for or necessary. And a lot of the jokes, like they made the Ruben Studdard winning season 2 of American Idol joke, like
which got like groans from the audience.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that.
Like, oh.
Once again, it's like, because
everybody was like, is he still alive?
Well, that was Ruben Studdard in the audience. Am I still alive?
Taking up.
Is he working PA for SNL now? Is that what it is?
Hey, he's hanging in there, man.
Yeah. Well, you know what I found kind of interesting, stepping back and just looking at the Weekend Update as a whole, is that when they're doing those bits, well, that's probably taking a character monologue away from another player. because they only had one character monologue, Stefan, who is great. Everybody loves it. Awesome character. They should do it all the time, but it's been done a lot, right? And they have a lot of new people. And there's a lot of people from the history of SNL that say doing those monologues are a great way, especially if you have a stand-up background. It's, you know, you just talk front. You know, you can hit your jokes easier. You're not dealing with a lot of other outside influences.
One of my favorite things was John Mulaney doing that a couple of years back. He so he's one of the brain of Stefan, right?
He's the writer of it.
Right. So he hasn't been around lately, which is why we haven't seen Stefan as much. But he came back recently, so we got Stefan back. But John Mulaney did a couple seasons back, or maybe last season. I don't remember. What was the segment that he did? Do you remember it?
Oh, he had this rant about like Girl Scout
the Girl
cookies
Scout
and how they
cookies.
should be sold year round rather than seasonally.
Right, and he was just a writer on the
yeah.
show, and it was a hilarious segment. It was just like, I remember the audience had that initial, who are you?
Yeah, we're like,
why are you in this? And then it was just so funny that he won them over. No, it would be an interesting spot to showcase either the performers who kind of had enough stage time, but I also love when they bring the writers in there. They have a lot of new writers this season.
And usually you only see those people in the audiences in the opening monologue when they need additional questionnaires, you know, and something like that. So.
And if not some of the writers, you have so many cast members, new cast members who have been criminally underused, like A.D. Bryant playing the debate moderator in the opening sketch of this episode. That was the first major time we've seen her in like 5 or 6 episodes, you know? So why, you know, like the way they've given Kate McKinnon and Cecily Strong some great desk pieces, I'd like to see them give Tim Robinson and like to see them give
And Tim
A.D.
Robinson, I feel like in the first episode, it was like he had a couple pieces, and you think it's going to build or continue, and it was like,
you know, I think
radar.
someone mentioned that Lauren seemed to purposely be kind of turning the wheel on, like, now it's your turn to be introduced to America. Now it's your turn. So he did it with Kate McKinnon. He did it with Tim a little bit. Definitely did it with Cecily recently. I would say it's mostly been Kate and Cecily.
Yeah.
But so maybe that's what it was. Maybe they kind of all had their go around, and now the second half of the season, we'll see if anyone kind of starts to build steam, because they all have kind of been given a few choice roles. I would say 80, not as much maybe. But let's go ahead and go into this Merryville Brothers sketch. I normally love this sketch. And spoiler, I guess I just made it clear that I didn't love it this time.
Yeah, this is the third time they've done it.
last time it was with Jim Carrey, I
They did
believe
it first
was the
with
last
Jim
Time was Jim Carrey.
The first time was the Jim Carrey. Okay.
Right.
Nailed it. And the second time they did it with Justin Timberlake. Then this is the third time they've done it. And and I think the big laugh here, the first time they did it was seeing the physical comedy and seeing the robotic movements, specifically of Taron Killam. That was the first time we really saw him come out on the show in a big role.
Groundlings and also
Taron
Mad
Killam.
TV.
Groundling's got the second guy to come from to be on Mad TV and SNL too.
Amanda Show alum.
Yeah, he's from the Amanda Show on Nickelodeon. Yeah.
Let's not forget.
Culver City's own.
Yeah, but at this point, we know what's coming with this sketch, and it kind of falls flat for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's nothing new you can do about it. There's no new spin or something you can continue. You're just literally doing the same sketch you were, except having Bruno Mars in it instead of Jim Carrey, Justin Timberlake, and
Yeah. This sketch, at the least, though, it's a nice showcase for the argument I've been making recently, where you have to be such a well-rounded performer on SNL now. So this is a showcase for their physical performers. Taron is amazing in this kind of robotic motion. I think it's another situation where Bruno Mars is like, I can do the robot. You got anything for that?
That's what I mean. It's like,
in fact, we do.
Yes, we do. Let's pull out the robot. So, and then we went into the Wilderness Lodge with the, Yogi Point, or Yeti Point, excuse me, Yogi, because it seemed about as funny as an episode of Yogi. It's probably why I called it that.
That was the first draft, Yogi Point.
Yeah.
They changed it to
I think it would have been funnier if it was Yogi Point now. Hey, SNL, rewrite it Yogi Point.
They keep stealing all these picnic baskets.
Yeah, that would have been funnier. Good Lord.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. If they took a minute and a half to get to their picnic basket joke, it still wouldn't have been that great either. They took a long time to kind of get to what was going on.
And then,
there was this awkward thing where, I'm going to say it now and it's going to make people feel weird because the word has this power, but they had to dance around the word rape.
Ooh, so weird.
Yeah, you feel weird, Eric? Yeah, there's
you
a
felt
wave.
that cold shoulder?
Yeah.
You know who's a rapist? Sandusky.
Right. Well, there you go.
America, do not forget that.
Right. So if you have any feelings about him, feel free to comment and let Matt know how you feel about that joke. But aside from that, no, I think they had to kind of dance around that. They were like, so he molested you? And he did thing sexually to you, so that was kind of an awkward thing. But also, that didn't even appear until well into the sketch.
Yeah.
This is a moment where Bruno Mars's comedic timing broke down a little bit for me. SNL loves, and I don't know why, this like swing to the other camera with like a goofy face, like with these wide eyes, and his timing was usually off with the editing of that. So he would say his line and then kind of turn a little too early and make the face, and just like it was getting a little excruciating after a while.
It just wasn't really hitting. It felt really uncomfortable. Yeah, and I think they've tried to do that big camera turn. They did it in the Californian sketch, and they've done some other soap opera parodies in the past where they do it, and never really seems to hit very well. And
because it's funny in 1991 is the problem. It's just really dated.
Yeah.
You know, and I felt, obviously we went over the haters, really dated sketch. It's like cool in 97.
Right.
This was really dated and maybe never cool, but not cool now for sure. And it just like... You know, maybe that's why you guys are so hungry for the sad mouse, because it's like, something that seems like it's of the current era. Because a lot of this is just like, I don't know if there's a 60-year-old sketch writer who's the only one awake at the end of the night and then comes in and changes all the papers and then leaves. And then they're like, oh, I guess I have to turn this in.
He just at the end of them always puts the end at the end of the sketch, and that's where it's coming from or whatever. That's how they know it's over.
Maybe
Let's get out of here, blue hairs.
Exactly. That's what we're dealing with now. But yeah, just a lot to be desired. And then... obviously, the closer for the evening was the Underground Records, which again I was like, "Hey, all right, '97, alive and well on SNL."
Yeah, well, this joke has really worked before though too. At times, I love these Ask Dan deaths that they
Bobby
do each
Moynihan.
time. But this was Nassim Pedrad's only appearance. Nassim is Groundlings as well.
Yeah.
So I was a little excited, and then I think it was hurt by this meshing of the political jokes, political commentary, mixed with the insane clown posse kind of references that they're doing.
They've done this plenty of times, and it's another one of these diminishing returns things where it's one of these recurring sketches where I don't know if we really need to see it again. And they always do some kind of holiday theme, like, oh, it's springtime, it's Easter, Underground Records.
Could have done Halloween because they don't have a show next week, so they could have hit something on Halloween.
And then the fact that they made it Election Day, I felt like, all the leftover political jokes that they hadn't made earlier in the episode, let's just cram them here in the last.
Binders. Just throw it out.
The one
Binders full of women joke, comes an hour 29 in. So, maybe leave that one under the rug.
So overall, I mean, I feel like this week didn't have a lot going on for it. I think that they did their best when they agreed this performer has a couple strengths. Let's go ahead and play with them. So showcasing his voice, he does have a great voice. I did enjoy his voice. Actually, we should mention him as a musical guest.
He has an amazing voice. Yeah, that's
very
all I can
impressive.
say. Yeah, very impressive. Real talent. Real talent.
Yeah.
That guy's a talent. He's
He's going places.
The end. Put the end in your dance. You're a talent.
No security at NBC studios there.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I was overall impressed. Now, with what I got from him, I wasn't overall impressed by the episode. It kind of goes into this thing that we're going to be talking about a little more in a few minutes here. But just these performers where this is a situation, they had this guy who could do a couple of things, and then they wrote a couple of things for him that were
strengths,
okay.
Right.
That's now just in general these shows playing to the strengths of who they have. I think we kind of need to set up what is required of an SNL performer, because he was a host, we will let him get away with the fact that he can kind of sing, he can kind of move kind of funny, but what else is required of an SNL performer?
Exactly, that's a good point to make. And again, not the strongest episode, but who's got a good week coming up? AfterBuzz.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Why's that?
Because they got a full lineup of great shows here. So if you watch our show, I'm sure you watch many others, and or experiment like I did in middle school.
Middle school? That is so early
bloomer, man.
Well, you know what? I was from a broken home, so a lot of things happen. You know, when your mom's at work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I think a lot of moms are at work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, are they?
Binders full of moms. So
More importantly, though, these shows at AfterBuzz, go check them out. There's a bunch of great hosts here doing a bunch of great shows, and let them know you love them as much as you love us.
So what'd you do in high school?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, all right.
You just kind of blacked out there.
You know what? But I do want to talk about the improv backgrounds and how, you were just doing that lovely lead-in, Filup, about.
Sure. Actually, I think I kind of want to give a brief rundown just so that we're all on the same page about what your average SNL performer has been through. So if we kind of like rush through these a little bit, we already mentioned that Eddie Bryant, Cecily Strong, and Tim Robinson all came added this season. They're all out of IO. They've done stuff at the Annoyance Theater in Chicago too.
City,
very much out of Second City, which is a very classic way to get to SNL.
Well, because you have the 4 places pretty much in the world, I guess you could say, because we're so American-centric.
Sure.
You obviously have California, which is the Groundlings specifically. Then you obviously have Chicago, which is, obviously the ones you just mentioned, Annoyance.
IO, Second City.
Exactly, all those. You also have Toronto, which is Second City. And then you have New York, which is now UCB, which came from Second City. And started by Amy Poehler and all that stuff. But
Kate McKinnon is UCB. She's done a lot of sketch before this. She was on the Big Gay Sketch Show, which we all remember. She has years all that. She also done a lot of voice work, which is kind of interesting. Nassim Pedrad has done a lot of voice work. Will Forte was. I found him first on what was that MTV show? Clone High. He was the voice of Abraham Lincoln on that show. So a lot of SNL performers.
Will Forte from Groundlings as well too.
A lot of them have a lot of history and voice work too, which I think is indicative of being able to like play a strong character in a nuanced way just by focusing in one place. Tim Robinson, Cecily Strong, Vanessa Bayer, all out of IO. Taran Kalam, we talked about coming from Groundlings and Mad TV. That guy's been performing since he was a kid, by the way.
Yeah, he had a career going, and then he decided to go to Groundlings after he had a career going, and then obviously worked his way through that.
Interesting. Cecily Strong, she came out to LA and was told, you need to do Groundlings if you want to end up on SNL. And she said, no thanks, I'm going to go get a BFA in theater. And she became, that's what she got. She has, I think it was a BFA or a master's or whatever in theater, and then decided to go to Chicago and did IO.
And
that's
another,
awesome.
in addition to Taron, and Kenan Thompson, of course, another Nickelodeon child actor. He's been in the business for a while.
Yeah, Kenan kind of an interesting background because he's been on SNL for almost 10 years now. He started in 2003. I know that you are looking for the reign to end. It's he's the last king of Scotland. You're trying to get out of there, but you'd be surprised. He actually doesn't have that much of a background, other than, of course, we all remember him from. Well, we remember his awesome All That and the Kenan and Kel show,
Super Dude and Good Burger sketches.
Right.
Foundation.
But he did do that great, I believe, Oscar-winning role in D2, the Mighty Ducks movie.
Yeah,
that was his breakthrough role.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
He's great in that movie.
But he also had acted actually as a kid and came up through theater. Nassim, we talked about. She's from Iran, but she went to UCLA School of Theater. And then she did Groundlings. Bobby Moynihan. We talked about UCB.
And he was there for a long time. Bobby Moynihan.
Yeah.
I remember his name was kicked around a long time on like, ooh, this guy's when is he gonna make it over? Because it's taken so long, it may never happen.
Yeah, he also did a lot of sketch with Derek comedy. If you guys have ever seen like the bro rape videos, or
he's in their movie too.
Right. He also, surprisingly, of all the people, also has a BFA in acting too. It's just these guys have strong backgrounds. There's a couple of people I wanted to save till the end here because they have some interesting stories. Jason Sudeikis had been at IO for a while, I think. He did he join as a writer first? Is that what,
he joined SNL as a writer, and that was only after he was one of these major people at Improv Olympic in Chicago, and he had done stuff with Second City. He went
Comedy
over,
Sports?
he started in Comedy Sports, Kansas City, and then after Chicago, he went to Boom Chicago in Amsterdam, and then he was one of the original members of Second City's Las Vegas group. And then from there, he got hired as a writer on SNL, and then 2 years later as a performer.
Yeah, and now he actually performs at UCB now that he's in New York all the time. Yeah. So down to these two people I want to talk about a bit. These three people actually. So Jay Farrell, Bill Hader, and Fred Armisen. Bill Hader first. Bill Hader has kind of an interesting story where he kind of came out of nowhere. He was out here in LA. He had done IO West. He had done Second City, I think, and then he was just doing a sketch show. Was it Animals from the Future?
Animals from the Future, yeah. And Nick Offerman from Parks and Recreation, who plays Ron Swanson, his little brother was in that group, and they actually rehearsed in Nick Offerman's woodshop that he, of course, course, builds
He
canoes.
actually builds canoes in the switch up.
No kidding.
Yep.
He really does. He's his character.
Yeah, and Nick Offerman's wife, of course, Megan Mullally, went to go see this show and loved Bill Hader so much that she got him an audition on SNL and got him a meeting with Lorne Michaels, and from there his career took off. He was just a PA at the time. You know, he was on one of Schwarzenegger's movies, and he has all these like stories that he tells of like his days slaving away as a PA, but he went from PA to SNL.
Yeah,
That's
very
incredible.
quickly. He thought,
and so prepared, you know. I mean, obviously, I'm sure
Yeah.
he has even more of a background because he's doing live theater and
Right.
stuff. But
Well,
yeah, really.
he's one
prepared
of
when
these
came
people.
out.
He was just this rocket that wasn't going to be stopped by anyone. He just shot up very quickly. He thought he was going to be on an Iowa West house team. That was his dream. And then like shortly thereafter, he was on SNL. But okay, so the people I really want to talk about is Fred Armisen and Jay Pharoah, and that's because these are the ones that took different routes, and they don't have this improv training. You would think Fred Armisen is an improv guy.
Most
he
definitely.
actually did not do improv for his SNL audition, and I believe he was the only person cast from that group that auditioned.
Yeah, he spent years and years as a musician, just as a drummer. He was a drummer for the Blue Man Group in Chicago. He was a drummer for Trenchmouth in the '90s, and now, at some point in his career, he decided I want to do TV, and he started doing these weird segments for HBO where he would do like prank shows and go to different music conventions and pretend to be a reporter. And then he did some stuff for Late Night with Conan and Adult Swim and Crank Yankers, and then from there he got an audition for SNL, and that year they had all the people who were auditioning do an improv show, and he was the only one who sat out of the improv show. All he did was his Ferricito character playing all the drums.
Ay, Dios mío.
Ay, Dios mío. And he was the only one that year who got cast on the show.
Yeah, of all those people not doing any improv at all. So that's kind of interesting. This musician kind of takes this route and becomes one of the most monumental figures in SNL history. I'll say I think he shaped a lot of what SNL became. I feel like his sense of humor gave that Portlandia kind of curve. At least infected SNL a bit throughout his
He's a
reign of
real
terror.
like, Andy Kaufman style performer. He's such a wild card. A lot of his ideas just come from left field. A lot of his ideas are just like, what if they sang this weird song? And that's the whole sketch. And it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it just falls flat. Other times it's hilarious. So
Yeah, it really
he's a
comes
real
through and
exciting
shines.
person to watch.
So that's Fred Armisen, someone who's just built with this brain. He was just born with it, and it just leads you to being this kind of person. You're going to be on TV in some way. And then Jay Pharoah, what he did is he worked on his impressions. He says he started doing stand-up at 15. I don't, who knows what kind of stand-up you're actually doing at 15. But then he did a couple impressions. He had a couple of short sets that he would do. But really, his big thing was when Obama was running for president. He had an Obama impression very early on that kind of climbed up on YouTube, and that was kind of his route. So
Then he also had the like the 20 impressions of Jay Pharoah,
Right.
up to 50 impressions of Jay Pharoah.
Yeah, he kind of became a small YouTube celebrity because of his impressions.
Exactly.
Right. So all of this was a long way to kind of get to pointing out the backgrounds that these performers have, how well-rounded they are, how many years they've spent training. Taron Kalam working his entire life to both marry the Robin from How I Met Your Mother and to get onto SNL and just do what he was made to do. And then just this like really quick route that this guy has taken. Jay Pharoah just shot straight to SNL. Just the timing was right. They needed another black person on the show. They were having trouble on The View getting filling in the entire cast because there was more than one black character. It was just a shame. So I guess my point that I'm trying to make now is if there is anything that is an indicator of whether or not you're going to be a success on SNL, we can compare it to previous seasons. They didn't always have improvisers, but they have had these people with SCTV backgrounds for decades. They've taken risks on stand-up comedians before. Say that's the closest to what Jay's done. All of these people have learned certain techniques that make them work on this show. I'm actually curious I know, Matt, you've done a lot of Groundlings.
Yeah.
Erik, you've done a lot of IO. What it is that makes these improvisers specifically made for SNL and where maybe Jay Pharoah doesn't have that, and if it is because he doesn't do improv.
Well, a lot of good writing, I can just speak of, comes from improvisation. So, I mean, you can build writing through there. Especially in the early 90s, you had an influx of, you had the sketch comedy people, Phil Hartman, kind of the god of that, if you will, of that group of the sketch comedy people. And then you had the stand-up group. Adam Sandler might be the crown achievement of there because of how he continued. But you had that melange. That worked really well together because they each filled each other's gaps back then. Then the next kind of group came, and that was all sketch comedy people, and very heavily weighed towards the Groundlings when you had Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry and Chris Kattan. Right, a lot of these people, they came in with characters, and that show needed characters right away because they had a lot of competition from other networks trying to compete with SNL.
At the time,
exactly, take them down because all those people from the earlier 90s left. And so when you have instant characters, you get that training. When you go to Groundlings, you do monologue training. That's why I'm a little surprised that they don't have people on the desk, because when you go through the ranks at Groundlings, you have to go through doing monologues.
Like just character monologues?
Yeah. The third level at Groundlings is called Writing Lab. And half of Writing Lab is doing monologues. The other half is doing scene sketches with other people. And then when you do your show, final performance, you're going to do a monologue and you're going to do a scene. Okay? So you have to be apt and ready to do that, right? And that's the third level. The fifth level would be Sunday Company and, eventually joining into the Groundlings. So that's halfway kind of through the ranks there.
Yeah. And I would say, like, in addition to all the character training you get by doing improv classes and improv training, like, I think there's something to be said of, like, when going through IO and going through UCB, you learn something about, like, what's the game of the scene? Like, what is funny about the scene? And when you're an actor and when you have someone who presents a sketch to you, a lot of these sketches have very clear premises and very clear games that are being heightened. Just what's the pattern of the scene? What's the crux? What's the comedic idea that's being heightened here? And when you're an actor, when you understand that same mentality and understand that same comedy philosophy, you can more faithfully perform that sketch and perform it to what the writer's intent was.
Exactly.
Rather than distract it with your side character, distract it with your own comedic style, you can work more collaboratively with the writers, not just with coming up with sketches and rehearsing them, but actually performing it live in that moment. It's a more collaborative process rather than just like, just me, just getting to the joke.
Right, yeah, and these places, I mean, this is where SNL was born, out of these places, out of Second City specifically. And so it came from improv, it came from that, and then it developed into sketch, and then SNL grew out of that. So it's no surprise that these places have become farmhouses for these people, because I mean, when you're a groundling, that's what you're doing. You're doing sketches. The Sunday Company, which they put a show on every week, it's a brand new show, and they're doing sketches. I mean, you're doing the job that you're getting hired to do.
It's perfect training ground.
It's perfect training ground. So, I mean, I'd love to talk more about it, but we have to get to our lovely predictions.
Yeah, really quick, I do want to say that my only perspective on this, I don't care necessarily if you did improv. I think it's a huge benefit, but performance of some sort, that's why I brought up Fred Armisen. Okay, so we have improvisers, we have actors. This guy's been touring with bands for years, 45 years old. He's a lot of this experience. I think you cannot. Lauren needs to not put people on the show who are not comfortable in front of audiences. I think that's the number one problem with Jay Farrell. He got his training in front of a camera in his room.
And you're probably right.
Yeah, cool.
But
Predictions. And now, your AfterBuzz TV.
Our predictions for next week and in the future.
2 weeks.
Well, next week we're going to have a killer rerun episode.
That's right. Next week, I predict, will be a good rerun. But you want to lead us off, Eric, with predictions?
Yeah, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have Louis C.K. host the show.
November 3rd.
With Fun as the musical guest. And Louis C.K. has some SNL experience. He worked with, of course, Robert Smigel on the TV Funhouse cartoons that they did during the 90s.
Yeah.
So in many ways, this will be a return for him. But he is a more experienced, a more settled down Louis C.K. So it'll be interesting to see how his more slower form of comedy fits in with the faster pace of SNL. I think we'll be in tune maybe to see some political candidate cameos with the election the following Tuesday. So hopefully we'll get to see Obama or Romney or someone other than Tom Hanks, who was great, or
which we skipped over, but it was pretty easy to skip over him because it was almost But thanks for showing up, Tom. I like you. I like you.
I think we're going to see a slow, not a slow, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of range out of Louis C.K. I think he's hilarious at what he does, but I think we're going to see him relegated to a couple of straight man roles, and then maybe some characters that are purposely outside of his range, but those won't be the strong points. I think the strongest points will probably be characters played by other cast members, and the most of the laughs probably aren't going to come from Louis himself.
Okay, gotcha. My prediction, and I'd put money down on it, I'll put 50 push-ups if you want, just like Steven did the other week. 50 push-ups says they don't do a song in the monologue. No song in the monologue.
Sure.
Okay.
I will take that
Louis
bet.
C.K., I guarantee. So we'll leave you on that. You guys want to tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at EA Voss. I also perform improv at the iOS Theater every Tuesday.
Cool. You can hit me up on Twitter too at FIMO. Just let me know if you want to carry a conversation on there. We can move it over to Facebook or AIM or just like late night phone calls.
Wow, offering the AIM. That's sexy. Well, I've always got something going on. You can always find me at www.matthewele.com. And so until November 3rd,
Aw.
I bid you guys adieu, but we'll make it through.
Hey,
Kisses.
get registered. Go vote.
Yeah, everybody go vote. I don't really
Soon.
care.
Yeah.
Honestly, we're in California. It's Democrat. All right, talk to you later. See ya.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
I didn't do it, but we should.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.